Oh, hello, class. Um, the topic of the lecture today is research. Um, it's something I always include in this course. It's important. You're all probably going to be taking at least one course that focuses on research, but it's important for the project that you've started, the team project, the direct marketing plan for the Denver DMA, for Procter and Gamble launching much more environmentally conscious um, packaging for shampoo. And you're going to need to do secondary research, and you're going to need to do possibly some primary research. In fact, I think I do call for that. So um, we're going to go over some of the basics in terms of consumer research today. I also want to remind you that I did create a Padlet, which I thought might be a good way to do an ongoing Q&A on the project. So if you have a question for me or another team, you should have a question for another team, you can post it on that Padlet and I will monitor it. I'm not sure I'm going to be there every day, but unless it starts getting really active, but I will answer the question there, and that way anyone who goes on the Padlet can see the question and the answer. Okay, I hope that's helpful in communicating. I know it's a complicated project. It's a very realistic project because it's based on data, it's based on a DMA, it's based on an in-market test of a new idea, which is how a company like P&G does things. So I hope it's a project that you guys will learn from. Okay. Well, we'll talk about research, then we'll talk about what's due. So I kind of start this lecture the way I finish it, with a summary slide of everything I'm going to cover. This is a phrase you may have heard before. Knowledge is power. What do I mean by that in terms of research, in terms of business? Um, well, the person who has the data at her fingertips, who knows the facts, will win the argument. That's kind of the overall thought. So, in terms of a work environment, um, if an issue is being discussed, debated back and forth, knowing, um, again, the data that are relevant to the issue is what will make the difference between winning or losing an argument. And I can also tell you that the people who know most about the business that they're working on are the ones who are the most successful. So, for instance, here's it's not a real life example, it's an example from a movie that I'm very fond of. The movie's called, I believe, The Pursuit of Happiness, I think it's Happy. It's Will Smith, he of controversial Oscar behavior fame, but also lots of acting fame for that. Um, Plays a guy who based on a true story, a guy who ends up having his own stockbroker brokerage company and financially very successful. But early on in his career, before he goes for the stock broker training program, he's trying to make some extra money by selling these medical machines. Does that sound familiar? He's living with his wife and his young son, and his wife's not very happy with the living situation, it would seem, because they're struggling, he's struggling, and he has himself purchased a whole bunch of these machines, and so he goes to doctors' offices and he demonstrates how the machine works, and many times he's able to sell a machine and he makes a profit versus what he paid for the machine. And you may remember there's a scene, I think more than halfway through the film, where his last machine, I think, has been stolen by some guy that runs off with it. And Will Smith, the character, manages to get the machine back. He manages to set up an appointment at a doctor's office. He's going in. Doctor says, "Well, I've got, I really like you, but I've just got a few minutes, so, let's get down to it." And he opens the machine up and click, and it won't work. The doctor's like, "Well, look, come back another time." And Will Smith is like, wait just a minute. I think I can fix this now. What happens is I don't know if he has a screwdriver, he has some kind of basic tool. He manages to fix the machine, demonstrate it, and as I recall, the doctor buys the machine. Knowledge is power. If you're going to sell something, know how it works. That's just one example. Research equals science. So consumer research, as much as possible, is trying to replicate the incredibly clean conditions of a chemistry lab or a medical lab, where experiments are clinically pure and clean. There's often just one variable that's being tested. Um, People are wearing hazmat suits. In some cases, their hands are clean. They've got not only that, rubber gloves on. Nothing corrupts or interferes with the cleanliness and purity of the research. As much as possible, we're trying to do the same thing with consumer research. The overall goal is to get at the truth. Now, there are two basic kinds of research. There's secondary research and primary research. Secondary research is research that has already been done. It's in the can. There are a number of companies that do secondary research and then sell subscriptions to ad agencies and businesses. And our Gladys Marcus library here is full of secondary research, which we are going to talk about some more. Primary research is when you're doing it yourself, and it usually has to do with your own customers. It is expensive for the most part to do, and that's where the scientific skill is required. That's where research equals science, and many times you're going to be hiring a standalone research firm to manage, who are experts in this, to manage the process for you, and you're going to oversee the process. And then primary research breaks into two basic kinds of primary research. Qualitative, let me go back here. Qualitative research, a focus group would be an example of qualitative research. Qualitative research, the results don't have a lot of numbers. The results mostly have words, because qualitative research gets very deep individual reactions to different stimuli. You might show, for instance, a new ad campaign to 10 of your customers, all in a focus group at the same time, and ask each person to react to it. Do they like it or not? Is it effective? What does it say to them? And you're able to hear people talk about whatever the issue is. You're not getting a quick number, do you like it or not, rate it from 1 to 5. No, you're getting a description of what it means to them. So you're really getting more deeply inside people's heads with qualitative research. And we'll talk more about it as we get into our lecture today. Quantitative research, this is where we need larger sample sizes. This, again, is where research equals science. Qualitative research is not so much science. There's some. You have to have the people that match the target that you want. That takes some scientific sort of work. But it's the quantitative, it's the surveys, the customer interviews that we really get scientific. The larger the sample size, the more projectable the results are, the more reliable. The questionnaire is where you really have to be scientific and build a questionnaire that doesn't tip your hand too early and really, as much as possible, gets um, true results from people. And we're often testing one variable at a time with our quantitative research, just as we would with scientific research. And I always like to tell my students, if your product is sold in a retail situation, whether it's a wholly owned retail situation, it's your store, or as in this case, you are selling, I don't know what these guys, I don't know what these packages are. But anyway, maybe Snapple cases or something, or drink cases. It's a little hard to tell. But if you're in a competitive retail situation, I mean, you want, either way, you want to check out what's going on at retail. Don't neglect that middleman. Go to the stores, see what's happening in retail. If it's a competitive situation, I can tell you when I worked on Procter and Gamble, which I did for 5 years, beginning of my career, we would do store checks. We, when you visited a different city, you would go into chain grocery stores. You'd see where your brand was in the store, and you'd look at the aisle, and you would count the facings. So every one of those bottles is a facing. And how many facings do my bottles have versus my competition? What's my share of the total facings on that aisle? Are my packages, are my bottles at eye level, or are they down low? Obviously, eye level is ideal. And going through the rest of the store, does any competitor have a display or an end cap, we call it, where there's a special promotion that's put on the end of the aisle? Um, I would write a report up on that. So be aware of what's going on at retail. Make that part of your knowledge. Okay. I'm gonna stop here and then we'll pick up.